Oh boy. Well, a lot of people love him. A lot of people love to hate on him. He's not quite at the level of Aquaman in the latter feat, but I wanted to take a look today at why it's so hard to make a good Green Lantern game. Before we get started, I want to, hit right off the bat a couple of things here. First off, I know there is a Green Lantern game that exists, Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters. I played it for this video. It sucks. It's terrible. This is not about why there's no game in existence, but why there's no good game. Secondly, me advocating for why it might be hard for a game to be made doesn't mean I don't want one. I think that's something that's been a little confused by some people in the first two videos in this series, and I'm saying that loosely, with Superman and the Flash. I want a game. Absolutely. I want a good game for these characters. But I want to talk about why I think it's hard to adapt them to this medium. And then my goal is for you to actually offer suggestions in the comments of how you would do it. It's because I've seen fantastic ideas from a lot of you guys on both Superman and the Flash. So, hey, I'm really hoping we can do the same thing today with Green Lantern. Let's hop into it. The first thing with the Green Lantern that I think makes it hard is that it starts out, every video starts out this way. This is starting to appear to be a DC trend to me. He has a lot of different powers. A lot. It really depends what version you want to look at, what ring bearer you want to look at as well. Do you want to look at like Hal Jordan, where he's essentially like the willpower master, where he can just do whatever he wants? Do you want to look at Kyle Rayner, where he's more about weird, almost like this otaku imagination type thing? Or do you want to look at someone like Jon Stewart, who's more just a brute strength Green Lantern? There's a lot of different ways to take it. But the thing is, the Green Lantern ring itself can pretty much make anything. There are limitations on it, especially like I've said in other videos, depending on the author, the continuity, etc. But the Green Lantern ring's main limitation is the willpower of the user. And the willpower of the user is often very high because the Lantern ring actually does sort of scope out its potential wearer. It doesn't just go to anybody. It's not going to go to someone with no willpower. That's just not a thing that happens. So the fact that the Green Lantern ring is really only limited by imagination in a lot of ways means that you're having to eliminate or limit imagination in order to create these powers. And why do I say that? Why would you have to do that? Because essentially, if you're a Green Lantern, you can create anything. I can create a giant penny and throw it at you. I could create a sledgehammer and chisel away at rocks and cause a mountain to fall on you. I could create a shield around me, something basic like you might see from, Jon Stewart. No shade towards Jon Stewart, love the guy. There's a lot you can do with this concept, and you can sort of see this in something like Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters. There's things here that you can make, but it's very limited in scope because they have to program in each and every one of these things. So for an actual Green Lantern fan that's going to be playing the game and thinking like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, they're not going to be able to do all those things. Whereas if you have a very limited concept like Batman, and as much as I love Batman, he is a man who is limited by technology he carries, you can't just really expect him to get out of any scenario just by thinking about it. I know in recent years, Batman has sort of really become god tier in a lot of ways, as far as like he's a genius and he can reason his way out of problems and sort of come up with any solution, but he has to physically do that in the world. The Lantern ring can manifest any solution that the user thinks of, which is a different matter entirely, I think. On top of that, it really depends on how far you want to scale this character back, because with Lantern, you definitely need to nerf him. He's not quite like Superman in terms of raw strength, and he's not like Flash in terms of raw speed. But the reason I think that you would absolutely have to nerf a Green Lantern for a game is because of that imagination. You do have to limit those things. And I had an idea for that, actually. It would sort of depend on what type of game you want to make. I think an interesting idea for this would be something like Drawn to Life, where you can sort of create something yourself and bring it to life in the game, but the game would have to be a very specific type of game in order to do that. I mean, Drawn to Life is a very limited game in terms of what gameplay goes on, but all of its effort went into the imagination aspect. So that's how you could just not eliminate that. But, I mean, Scribblenauts is sort of the same way, you know, where you can sort of just make anything show up, but the gameplay itself it's a little more limited. So do you want to go that route, or do you want to go the more route, I guess, of Batman Arkham or a action RPG where you just cut down the creativity of what the Lantern Ring can do and just let the player let loose? Or do you want a challenging game or not? That's another question we have. That will really determine how far you scale back this character. Because we've discussed in other episodes of this show that with these characters that are so powerful, you either have to kind of commit one or two ways. Are you going to make the whole thing a breeze, where it's like, oh, you're Superman, or oh, you're the Flash, everything's solved just like that, it's over? Or are you going to try to create a gameplay difficulty and sort of create your own adaptation of the character that way, where you can have it so he's powerful enough that you're still thinking like, I'm Green Lantern, you know? And I've talked to some of my friends. One of my friends who brought up a good example of this is the idea of like, they want to make you feel like the Green Lantern. Maybe you can't necessarily do everything he can do in the comics. That's one way to do it. Or you go the way of just everything's a breeze. That's going to be obviously up to gameplay development on something like this, and it's something I'm interested to hear your take on. Honestly, I think that the powers themselves really can be scaled back, and a lot of them aren't necessary and don't need to be seen. So, the ring has like a universal translator built into it. That's definitely a power I could see being used and used well, because I think that a game for Green Lantern should definitely take place in outer space. Now, I don't mean you're floating around the vast realm of space just doing nothing the whole time, but you shouldn't be on Earth with this game. Now, people said the same thing about Superman. Superman's a Kryptonian, but he does have stories that take place in the universe. Most of his stories take place on or near Earth. Green Lanterns aren't really that way. They each guard a different sector. They travel all over the place all the time, and they're the space cops of the DC universe. I really think they could go all in on that sort of idea. Basically, sort of like LA Noir-y, maybe, but not with all the facial expressions and the press X to doubt. And I think that they could kind of do this push where it's like you're out investigating things, you have superpowers. That's where I wonder if a narrative-based game would actually benefit this character more. You can eliminate a lot of these problems with the Telltale style of game. And yes, I know Telltale's gone and their corpse has kind of been resurrected. But that style where you sort of just have a narrative and you pick decisions in that narrative, that could almost eliminate a lot of the OP issues, because you wouldn't have a lot of that gameplay, and then you could go forward more into the cop aspect of it. I also think this character really does shine the best in outer space because of that. They're able to run into the wackiest characters. They're able to sort of take on the biggest cosmic threats without going up against something like a street level thug that really we've seen 100 other places and fits other heroes more. I just think that's sort of the way that you'd want to take this. The only other thing that I see preventing a good Green Lantern game, possibly, is public reception to the character. Now, you're going to say, no, wait a minute, Jay, Green Lantern's awesome, I love him, or you're on the opposite side, you already had your mind made up about him because of the comics. But we have to think about this from a mass audience standpoint. I know, the mass audience. They kind of suck sometimes, right? Because people who love a comic book character or a movie character or whatever, they want to see it from that scope a lot of the times. But companies really market to the widest possible demographic. And what's the Green Lantern product that the widest possible demographic has been exposed to? It's not Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters, although some did play that, unfortunately. It's the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie. Yeah. Let that sink in. A lot of people saw this film. Now, it's not Star Wars, it's not up there like that, it's not the Avengers, but it was damaging to the Green Lantern IP. Nobody really liked it. The few people that did just think, it's kind of a fun distraction. That's about all it was able to do. It's been memed to all high hell, by either Ryan Reynolds himself in the Deadpool movie, to just everybody online. This thing has been trashed completely. And we've seen little glimmers of the Green Lantern in something like the DCEU or recent movies like that, but never a full-on movie. There's a lot of news that they're sort of rebooting it now, but we haven't seen it yet. And I really think a lot of that is because of that damage that the brand received from that stupid movie. Like the fact that everybody saw this and it was just sort of a disaster and a joke, and that's the one big mass market hit that the Green Lantern's gotten. That sucks. Because other than something big like the Justice League cartoon, which still would have limited viewership comparatively to an in-cinema movie, that's the exposure people have had to this character. So we're not only looking at the problems with adapting a character like this into the gaming medium, but also the problem of rebuilding his brand after such a train wreck of a film was shown in front of everyone's eyes and scarred into their brains. So hey, let me know in the comments down below what you think. What sort of things do you think would make a good Green Lantern game? Would you even want to see one? Do you want a space cop drama? Do you want to go around between different planets? Do you want to just be on one planet in outer space that isn't Earth? Or do you want to see Green Lantern on Earth? And what sort of gameplay style would you go for if you were making a game? Would you go action RPG, side scroller, drawn to life Scribblenauts, or would you go Telltale? I'm interested to read your comments in the description down below. And remember, no game is impossible to make. Nothing is impossible. Things might be hard, but great ideas are always what pushes through that difficulty. I'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day. Check out the Reddit, the Twitter, Patreon, whatever you want. Links in the description as always. Have a great night. Green Lantern's light.